Hey folks, Valentin Nemad here, and today I have an interview with the developers of Kinstrife, a medieval physics-based action RPG. I'm a big fan of physics-based stuff, especially when it is grounded to reality, and I can say, in this interview, I got quite a lot of pleasant surprises I didn't know of going in. One of those is large battles of 50, potentially even 100, physically simulated characters. So, the talk was on what the game is about, what the gameplay flow will be like, and of course making all of the physically simulated stuff work and the challenges with going for that. Tomorrow I'll be posting the second part of this conversation on the response mechanics side of it, which I think you guys will also very much like. Now, without further ado, here it is. Hi, welcome. Let's begin with your introductions.
Yeah, first of all, hi. Thanks for having us. We're really excited and happy to be here. So I think I'll just start real quick. Maybe first of all, Khaya and I, we are Finitude. That's what we call ourselves as developers. And we have been developing Kinstrife, our game, for more than a decade at this point, actually, in fact. So yeah, over the years, we have worked a lot on the game, but also I'd say have grown to become pretty good friends. Maybe I'll just introduce myself real quick before we delve more into that. I'm Christoph, like I said. I still have a day job. I don't do game dev full time yet, so I work as an engineer in medical research and spending my remaining free time on game development, where I do, as indie devs, basically doing everything, doing programming, doing art. I also do the sound design and the music, which I think is actually a really great part about indie game development, that you can get to do all these cool different parts about game development. And I live in Berlin, and I think that's about it for an introduction. Do you want to go next, Kai?
Sure, yeah. Hey, I'm Khaya. I'm the other half of Finitude from the Netherlands, 35 years old, and as with Christoph, I've been working on the game since the start. I actually have a background in international business. I started a startup in between, starting on the game and where we are now, and I've been working on the game full time for maybe the last 3 years, and I think things have really gotten serious in the last 5 years, where we really decided, okay, this is what we want to do. And I do the animation and a lot of the combat and some of the technical character stuff.
Alright, so I didn't know it was a decade in the making, so tell us the story about Kinstrife and basically what the game is about and how it came to be.
So we met up modding Mountain Blade, of course. I think looking at the game, it quickly becomes clear that we're also seeing it as a huge inspiration. So modding, actually, I think even still the original Mountain Blade, so before Warband came out, so old school stuff. I think it was the IRC server. So we met up and decided to make a game ourselves, right? Coming from modding, we thought, how hard can it be, right? Like, modding is one thing. How hard can it be to transition to game development? So that's when we started out. So I think it was around like 2009, actually. And I think we had this rough idea of making a game that has both the RPG side of things, where you really explore and get to experience a historical world, and at the same time have these really cool, intense, but also larger scale battles where they also have like a tactical element. I think that really was what got us going initially.
Indeed, yeah. So I actually started, from my perspective, also modding Mountain Blade. We were on their forums. That's where we met. I actually made a mod called The Holy War, which I believe was the first Crusades mod for Mountain Blade at the time, which was all very cool. And indeed, when we pivoted to making our own game, this was around 2009, like Christoph said, became pretty apparent that the skills we thought we had modding didn't really translate into game development, because we weren't programmers. We could model a little bit, we could animate a little bit, but to then start a whole new game in a separate engine, became quite clear that we're also dependent on other people coming into the project, and a lot of people came and went over the years, especially programmers. So that maybe the first 5 years was spent, well, let's say the first 3 years was spent trying to get something off the ground without us having actual programming skills. And then I think in 2012 we decided, okay, enough's enough. We're going to teach yourself how to program. And it took a couple of years more until we had our first alpha. Back in 2018, we released sort of a tech preview where we had the first prototype of some of the physics and some of the character systems. And from then on, when we managed to get that out, we decided, okay, what we want to do, that's achievable. We've gotten the skills. Now let's seriously do it. And it's been another 5 years since then. But I think now we're finally at the point where, yes, we're getting to the point where the game, or parts of the game we're making, is getting close to the vision we had when we set out.
Yeah, and maybe also as a quick addition here, it was only, I think, in something like 2014 along the way where we decided to go into a direction which I think also brought us here, which is, of course, the physics-based combat. And we were just, trying some things out, playing around with it. But I think we had our first kind of prototype, I would say, in 2015, where it started to really work on first level. And ever since, I would say a big part of the development effort has been getting the physics-based combat going. But perhaps first, because you also asked Valentin, what is Kinstrife? What is the game about?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Wait, because we didn't mention it yet, right? It is a non-linear single-player medieval role-playing game with physically simulated combat. And another way, I suppose, you could describe it is as a knight simulator. You step into the shoes of, a young, aspiring, maybe soon-to-be knight, and you, first of all, really have to pick up the basic skills and become a knight, build up a following, make a name for yourself in this medieval world. And there's the physics part that is embedded into all of this, into this role-playing game, and that is the overarching theme where we're going with this.
Gotcha, yeah. So how basically the combat kind of be like? Let's say, I mean, what I'm hearing, I'm kind of imagining something like Kingdom Come Deliverance in a way. What would be like the overall gameplay flow?
It's more of, I would say, Kingdom Come Deliverance is really a classical role-playing game where it is very much about you as Henry playing that story, whereas we are going with a non-linear role-playing game where it's kind of sandbox-like, and that's also where I think we took a lot of inspiration from Mount & Blade.
Gotcha.
Where you are free to travel the world and choose your own path and strategy.
I'd see it more indeed as a blend between Mount & Blade, where you create your own adventure, you create your own band, and Kingdom Come, with slightly more emphasis on a grounded experience and slightly more story elements.
Gotcha. So I'm hearing the Mount & Blade inspirations, and would there be like AI teammates who have like your own band of knights, basically, or
exactly
it was at the time?
Exactly. So something you could call a retinue. You would have your retainers. You might say these days you kind of have your team or your crew who you will be building up over time, and who are going to help you out, whose skills you will depend on, but indeed who you are going to lead. And that's a big part as well. So as opposed to Kingdom Come, you will not just be traveling around on your own, but you will be building up a loyal and trustworthy company of your own.
Alright, yeah, so that was kind of like what I thought, because I mean, I hear about the physics-based combat and how they're gonna have like physically simulated combat of multiple bands and like, so how does that work? It was also a question I told you about gonna have next, is like, the physics-based combat is a very cool, massively cool feature. It does seem really complex, so to me here's what I hear with the band stuff is like a whole new level of complexity, so do tell us about that.
That's absolutely correct. I think it's, the physics-based combat, I think in terms of effort is perhaps comparable to the saying goes, if you make a game and you decide to make it multiplayer, multiply the effort by or complexity by 2 or 3 times. And I think as far as combat is concerned, I think the same thing can be said for making a thing physics-based. And that complexity is one thing when you go on a one-on-one fight, but when you have all sorts of other characters around you, friendlies, enemies, obstacles, perhaps, that really scales up the complexity. So for now, we've decided to focus for the start with the most simple thing, which is the one-on-one. But we have prototyped group combat, but that's nowhere near in as good of a state as the one-on-one duels or small-scale combat you've been seeing in the videos. But that is most definitely coming up. I've actually done some prototypes in terms of scale. So yeah, like I just said, one part of the complexity or the challenge is to make it so that the combat feels good in a group setting with physically simulated characters, because there are a lot of obstacles, a lot of things get tying into making sure people don't fall, don't stumble over each other, whether their swings are connect properly and aren't interfered with. The other part is on a technical level, on a performance level. Physically simulated characters are very performance intensive, and so that is a thing we have prototyped with, and we've managed to. I think I can pretty comfortably say that 50 characters at the same time is going to be very feasible, certainly in
Oh, wow.
high-end hardware. Yeah, so, but maybe I should. Yeah, I think the actual number I managed to get a 60 FPS with is 100. I actually have a video up on my personal channel showing that. So that's the aspiration. There's no clear idea to what extent that's going to be possible, but with a lot of optimization down the line, I'm quite confident that 50 characters fully physically simulated is going to be feasible on certainly in high-end hardware.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's the number we were shooting for, and then of course also, like Khaya said, those would be fully simulated. So we did get to that number of 100, but of course with level of details for characters who are further away, we would likely not have them always fully simulated. So I think we will be able to shoot for numbers of, let's say, maybe around up to 100. But another challenge, you mentioned the stumbling, Kai. I thought that was quite funny with the prototype that you uploaded, then you had a video, is that you could see characters really react to each other, but that also means they bump and they stumble into each other. So you had this thing where you dropped like a huge kind of like wrecking ball into the crowd, and then everybody bumped into each other, and you had this huge kind of almost like chain reaction going, which I thought was very interesting. But that's definitely another big part of the challenge when having those group fights, right? With physics-based things, if it's not physics-based, you can just turn off collision for friendlies and you're good to go. But with physics-based, you really have to make sure that it also works with characters not hitting friendlies all the time. They don't push each other over all the time. So yeah, that's something we're actually definitely facing and putting effort into.
It does lead me to a question of, would there be perhaps indoor fights with, you have responsive objects indoors and having all of that chaos happen in such an area?
So definitely, that's another cool thing as well, for sure. That so something we already have. I think we might have shown that in some of the videos already, where we have barrels, for example, or some sort of like parcels, some sort of cargo, basically. And yeah, totally. You are able to push people over those obstacles, push them into walls. I think at some other point with an older build, we had this thing where we had a flight of stairs, and you could push people down the stairs, basically, right? And yeah, that's the cool thing about physics-based stuff, is that you have all those options that come with it. which definitely makes development more tricky because that also means that the AI has to be aware of that, right? So you can't ease your way into it by just pushing them into stuff and they're completely helpless. But yeah, totally, you can actually already do that at this point.
Oh, nice. Alright, so that's about the release plans. Pretty much, when can people get their hands on the game, demo?
I think that's the $1,000,000 question, and I think public demo is one of our next big milestones. But we don't have any specific release dates on that, unfortunately. We know people are, there are a lot of people who really want to get their hands on the game, and we really want to get to the point where many people can play the demo. And we're getting quite close to having it, but unfortunately, it's still a bit too far off to have an exact date. And then, as far as the actual final release of the game is concerned, of course, also no date, but that depends on a number of factors. We're still very heavily in development. We are, like I said, nearing the point where you have like a good playable version of the game. So we're also considering whether we're going to go with a publisher or whether we're going to go self-published. And yeah, that's going to become apparent somewhere next year. So at least for my part, that's everything I can say about that at this time.
Yeah, because a big part of why it's so uncertain or why we can't really make good predictions is that for now we are just basically a team of one and a half, right? Because Khaya is really working on it full time, but I have my day job, so I spend all my evenings and nights where I have free time working on the game. But that, of course, makes it harder to get a good kind of grip on when we can expect to reach certain milestones. And of course, down the line, depending on how it goes, we do hope to expand the team at some point, which would, of course, massively speed up development as well. But that definitely also depends on the funding situation. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No fixed dates we can say, unfortunately.
Awesome. So, yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, was really enjoyed talking about the game and appreciate it.
Yeah, same here.